Before you scroll past this, I need you to stop for just one moment. Because right now, somewhere in this world, there is a person who woke up this morning, looked in the mirror, forced a smile, and walked out the door carrying a weight that nobody around them can even see. Maybe that person is someone you know. Maybe, if you're being completely honest with yourself, that person is you. This story is not about someone who had nothing and became something. This is about something far more painful and far more common. This is about a person who had everything the world told them to want and still felt completely hollow inside. This is about the kind of suffering that doesn't show up on anyone's radar because it hides perfectly behind a good job, a clean apartment, a bright Instagram feed, and a laugh that sounds just convincing enough. Stay until the end. Not because the ending is happy in the way movies make you believe happiness looks. Stay because something in these words might quietly reach the part of you that you've been protecting from everyone, including yourself. His name was Daniel Mercer, and from the outside, his life looked like the kind of life people pinned on their vision boards. He was 31 years old, living in a carefully decorated one-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor of a building in Chicago, Illinois. The city sprawled beneath his window every morning like a promise. All glass and steel and relentless motion. He had a good salary, a job as a senior project manager at a mid-sized marketing firm downtown, a gym membership he actually used, and a group chat with 6 friends that stayed consistently active. He drove a 4-year-old Honda Civic that was always clean. He called his mother on Sundays. He remembered birthdays. By every measurable standard that American culture offers for determining whether a person is doing okay, Daniel Mercer was doing okay. But here is what nobody knew about Daniel Mercer. He hadn't slept a full night in 14 months. Not once. He would lie in the dark of his apartment, city lights pressing through the curtains, and stare at the ceiling with his chest tight and his mind cycling through the same thoughts like a hamster wheel that someone had permanently broken. He would get up sometimes and go stand in his kitchen and drink water he didn't actually want, just to have something to do with his hands, just to interrupt the stillness that felt like it was slowly swallowing him. He had learned very early in his life that emotions were a kind of weakness you could not afford to display. Not because anyone had told him that in those exact words, but because of the way his father had moved through the world. His father, Thomas Mercer, was a construction foreman from Indianapolis who wore his stoicism like a second skin. Thomas didn't cry at funerals. Thomas didn't talk about hard days. Thomas fixed things, provided things, handled things, and if something broke him on the inside, you would simply never know. Daniel had watched his father absorb the death of his own brother with nothing more than a long silence and then a return to work on Monday morning. That silence had shaped Daniel the way water shapes stone. Slowly, completely, invisibly. So when things began to fall apart for Daniel, he did what he had been taught, without anyone ever teaching him directly. He kept moving. The fall apart began 18 months ago, when Emma left. Emma Callahan had been in his life for 4 years. They had met at a rooftop party in Wicker Park. She was laughing at something her friend had said, and Daniel had been struck by the specific quality of that laugh, the way it was completely unguarded, the way she seemed to take up exactly as much space as she needed and felt no guilt about it. They had talked for 3 hours on that rooftop. He had driven her home. She had texted him at midnight to say she'd had a genuinely good time, and that honesty had unlocked something in him that he hadn't known was locked. 4 years. They had grocery shopped together and argued about tile colors and spent long Sunday mornings doing absolutely nothing of consequence in a way that felt like everything. He had been ready to propose. He had actually bought the ring, a simple white gold band with a single small diamond because Emma had once mentioned, casually, during a walk along the Chicago River Walk, that she found elaborate engagement rings performative. He had remembered that. He had paid attention. He had been paying attention for 4 years. She left in October, a Tuesday. She came home from work, sat across from him at the kitchen table, and told him, with genuine sorrow in her eyes, that she had realized something over the past several months. She said she loved him, but that she wasn't in love with him anymore. She said she didn't know how to explain it better than that. She said she was sorry. He had nodded. He had said he understood. He had helped her move her things into her car over the following weekend with a steadiness that impressed even him. He had not cried in front of her. He had not asked her to stay. He had not told her about the ring, which he'd driven to a pawn shop in Evanston 3 days later and sold for 60% of what he'd paid. His friends asked how he was doing, and he said he was good. He said these things happen. He went back to the gym. He threw himself into a new project at work that required him to stay late most evenings, which was convenient because evenings in the apartment had become a specific kind of unbearable. He reorganized his kitchen cabinets at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday night. He ran 6 miles on a Saturday morning in November rain and came home and stood in the shower for a long time and felt absolutely nothing, and told himself that feeling nothing was the same as being fine, that he began to perform his life rather than live it. The performance was meticulous. At work, he was sharp, decisive, funny in the dry way that earned him respect rather than just affection. At the group dinners his friends organized, he laughed at the right moments and offered thoughtful contributions to conversations and deflected any sincere inquiry about how he was really doing with a smile and a subject change so smooth nobody noticed the redirect. On Instagram, he posted a photo from a weekend trip to Milwaukee, him standing at the lakefront looking genuinely like a man who had his life together. 47 people liked it. 4 people commented variations of "looking good, man." He stared at those comments at midnight and felt something close to contempt, though he couldn't be sure if it was aimed at them or at himself. The worst part was not the loneliness. The worst part was how good he had become at pretending, and how that pretending had started to feel like his actual personality. He could no longer locate, clearly, where the performance ended and where he began. He would catch himself laughing at something on TV and then wonder, a moment later, if he had actually found it funny or if he had simply executed the appropriate social response to a comedic stimulus. Even when alone, that he was disappearing inside his own life, and the terrifying part was that from the outside, everything looked absolutely fine. The night that changed something, and it changed slowly, not all at once, the way most real change happens, came on a Thursday in January 14. Months after Emma had sat down at their kitchen table, he had stayed late at the office again. The building was mostly empty by 8 o'clock. Just the hum of the HVAC system and the glow of his monitor and the quiet that he had come to both need and dread. He was reviewing a presentation for a client pitch the next morning, and he was good at this, genuinely good, and that goodness had become the only thing he trusted about himself. His work was real. His work had edges he could measure. His work did not leave. He finished the presentation. He saved it. He closed his laptop. And then he just sat there. He sat there in the dark office for a long time. The city lights cutting through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago glittering and indifferent below him, and something cracked open in his chest that he had not given permission to crack open. It wasn't dramatic. There was no single triggering thought. It was simply the accumulated weight of 14 months of carrying everything alone, and it had apparently reached some internal threshold that his control could no longer manage. He pressed the heels of his palms against his eyes. His breath went unsteady, and Daniel Mercer, who had not cried since his grandfather's funeral 8 years ago, sat alone in a dark office 40 stories above Chicago and cried in a way that frightened him with its depth. Not just for Emma, not just for the ring he had sold, but for some version of himself he had stopped being so gradually that he hadn't noticed the moment of disappearance. He didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of something.